AEW, a lot happened this week on the AEW front coming out of that Dynamite show. On Wednesday night, the biggest thing being the debut of Sting. Sting has signed a multi-year full-time contract with AEW. Of course, full-time, everything is relative. There are no house shows in AEW, so they run once a week on TV, and he won't necessarily be on every single show, but Sting is not just here for a couple of appearances during the year. He is here, he is in it, he is going to have some kind of role on television going forward. He showed up on Wednesday night at the end of a segment involving Cody Rhodes, Darby Allin, Team Taz. Team Taz was beating down the babyfaces after their match, which Darby won. Darby pinned Ricky Starks to win the tag team match. The lights went out. A video package appeared on the screen showing us this winter landscape. Fake snow began to come down in Jacksonville. And out from one of the entrance tunnels walks Sting in full crow face paint, black trench coat, had the baseball bat with him. He never said a word. The heels disappeared. Team Taz vanished, which I thought was very strange. When the lights came back on, they were gone. They bailed. They were afraid of this man. And Sting gets into the ring. Arn Anderson was in the ring. Dustin Rhodes was in the ring. He tried to come down earlier to make the save. So you had Arn, and you had Dustin, you had Cody, and you had Darby. Pretty much in four. I mean, Arn wasn't exactly in the corner, but basically four corners of the ring. And I didn't realize this when I watched it live on Wednesday, so I didn't talk about this on the stream. Somebody pointed it out to me after. The significance of Sting going to each of the four corners in the order that he did. He was looking at four generations of talent, from the oldest to the youngest. First, he stared down Arn Anderson, who he has a little bit of history with, I think it's safe to say. Then he stared down at Dustin Rhodes, who was looking up at him down on the mat in the corner. He was looking at Dustin. Then he knelt down beside Cody. And finally, he came face to face with Darby Allin. That is very cool. Again, the significance and the order of that didn't hit me right away, but when I went back and watched it, I said, oh, that's interesting. This is all happening, by the way, as we're hearing Tony Schiavone on commentary mark out like a little kid. He said on Twitter, Schiavone said on Twitter, that segment, that moment will go down as one of the most memorable of his career. And think about how long his career spans and the different promotions. So that's saying a lot. Now, I didn't know if the announcers were clued in ahead of time about Sting being there. Sting was hidden away from much of the roster and did not come out until he was right about to walk out. But I heard a little bit of the podcast Tony Schiavone did on the AEW YouTube channel after the show. And he mentioned that he was able to get together with Sting, before the show. So obviously they met beforehand. He knew he was there. That takes a little bit of the fun out of it, because I mean, his reaction was so genuine that I thought, okay, they maybe didn't even clue the announcers in. But apparently he knew he was there. But Schiavone was marking out on commentary. He was selling this like a very big deal. Now, Sting was under contract until earlier this year. He had a Legends deal with WWE. A few months ago, they pulled all of his merch from WWEshop.com. Very similar to what happened with Brock Lesnar. There's this separate merchandise contract. So, when your main contract expires, there's like another 5 or 6 months. They get to sell your merch, whatever inventory is left. Maybe they mark it down, put it on sale. But at the end of that period, they have to pull everything. And that's what happened with Sting, and that's where the rumors began and got a lot of people talking. Oh, is Sting going to go to AEW? Sting's on his way in. And there were no reliable reports about this. It was really just speculation that, okay, he's no longer under contract at WWE, and so that must mean he's going to go somewhere else. And why wouldn't someone like AEW make a play? Now, I didn't think there was any legitimacy to it, but clearly they got together and they made the deal. Now, I said at the time that what would, as far as what would make sense would be to make money off, the IP and the merchandising and everything, but I didn't really envision there being another role for Sting. And so there he was on Wednesday night. It was a shock to me. But there was a report this week that WWE had no interest in using Sting as a television character. And apparently Sting was either, I don't know if he was advocating for it or he was open to the idea of doing a cinematic style match with The Undertaker. I mean, that's the match that he has wanted for years. He has said it over and over and over again in interviews. Undertaker has addressed it once. Rarely has The Undertaker said anything about the whole Sting situation, but in all the media and all the press he was doing in recent months for his documentary, I think it might have been with ESPN, he did mention it. He did bring up the whole Sting thing, and he just sounded very cold to the idea. And I think it was more, not because he doesn't like Sting or anything like that, but he realizes in his head that for he and Sting at this point to have a match, he knows what he can and can't do. And Sting is older than The Undertaker is. He doesn't look his age. I think he looks pretty damn good for a guy who's 61 years old, but these are not guys who are in the prime of their career. They've had physical issues. I think in listening to what The Undertaker's, the brief comments he did make about it, I think he just thought the match would suck. And he did not want to go down that road. And he felt like if it was 10 or 15 years earlier, it would have been an incredible match. But they couldn't make it happen. Sting was not in the company at the time. I just never got the impression, and those comments he made did not do anything to change my mind, that The Undertaker was really never that hot on the idea of doing a match with Sting. And it may have just been entirely because he felt the quality of it was not going to be up to par. It's the same reason that Steve Austin gave many years ago for why we never saw the match with him and Hulk Hogan. He didn't think the match would be any good. He thought the match would suck. And I'm sure, depending on what people's expectations were, maybe it would have. But if it was something in the vein of an Austin, of a Rock Hogan match, was that really a fantastic wrestling match? I mean, I look at that match and I see it as a 5-star match. Not because the work rate was so good and they did so many moves and false finishes. That's not what that match was about. And I think Austin Hogan could have worked in a similar way. But Austin had the same mindset. I don't want to go in there with a guy who I feel like is not going to be able to, because, I'm not at my peak anymore and he clearly isn't at his peak anymore. And that was very important to Austin. He did not want to go in the ring and embarrass himself and have a bad match. And I feel like that's probably where The Undertaker's head has been for many years. But Sting has made it very clear that's the match that he wanted. And he was very upset that he didn't get it. Now we find out that he was open to this idea of a cinematic match, but Vince McMahon was not interested. It never appealed to Vince McMahon, is what the report says. Well, I don't need some internet report to tell me that. We already knew that. We already knew that Vince McMahon didn't want to do an Undertaker-Sting match because if he wanted to do it, it would have been done 5 years ago. I knew then that Vince McMahon didn't want to do the match. You know why? Because he didn't do it. This is not rocket science. It's pretty obvious that he was never hot on the idea. Because when they had the opportunity to do it, they whiffed. And it will go down as one of the bigger missed opportunities that this company has ever seen. But let us not, take away the idea that there is another person involved here. It's not just Vince McMahon. If The Undertaker didn't want to do it, then The Undertaker wasn't going to do it. You can't just put all of that on Vince McMahon. So again, that report to me, it's hardly some kind of breaking news. But I know it's very frustrating to a lot of people who felt like that was the last opportunity to do that big marquee match in a way that could have protected both guys without doing a regular wrestling match. And Vince McMahon just didn't see the appeal. But we get back to Sting now in AEW. He is 61 years old. He does have spinal stenosis. He's got a bad neck. Same reason WWE wouldn't clear Edge to wrestle for 9 years. Sting can't afford to wait around for 9 years, although it's been 5 already. 4 more years and he might have gotten cleared, but then he would have been 65 years old. Edge, at least, when Edge came back earlier this year, what is he, in his late 40s? Big difference there. Sting doesn't have 9 years to sit around waiting for Vince McMahon to change his mind on whether or not he can wrestle. So he left. And he got himself, I'm sure, a very nice deal from Tony Khan. I don't think Sting would have signed for anything less. we don't know for sure if he will be wrestling or not. All of the super chats and phone calls and questions I was getting from people on the Dynamite stream Wednesday night was about potential matches for Sting and fantasy booking him against this person and that person. And, for example, I said if he's going to wrestle even just a handful of matches, I would be shocked if Chris Jericho didn't push for it, because Jericho, I think, would look at that and go, oh, we can do something here, right? Here's another guy I never had the chance to work with, so I could see that being a match. Or do you put him in there with a younger guy like a Darby? I mean, look, there's any number of people that you can put in the ring with Sting. We don't know if he's even going to be wrestling. Full-time doesn't necessarily mean he has to wrestle. Even just a few matches. He could be an authority figure, which he was kind of doing for a while in TNA. I don't see that as being a good fit. That's why I was shooting down the Sting stuff when this first came up a couple of months ago. I don't want to see him as a GM. AEW does not need that. We hear about Tony Khan every 5 seconds on the show now. I know he made a quick cameo on Wednesday. But generally, we don't see him on the show, but every 5 seconds we hear about TK this and TK that. We need an authority figure. We already know who the authority figure is. We don't need the tired GM concept. Okay, well, if he's not going to be that, but he's going to be, in a recurring role on TV, then what? A manager? Do we not already have enough of those in AEW? I mean, what else could he do? What is the best way to utilize Sting? It's exactly what I said a couple of months ago when this stuff first came up. And I said, if they were going to sign Sting, if I were a promoter and I could get my hands on Sting, even at 61 years old, if he can't do what he used to do physically, merchandising, man. Merchandising. They got a new video game. They got 3 new video games. They got 2 mobile games and a console game coming out next year. They got a video game coming out. They've got a new line of action figures. That was just the first line. I'm sure they'll have more action figures coming out in the future. Already, he came out on Wednesday night. He was already wearing a brand new Sting AEW t-shirt. They put that shirt on sale. They set the record for the most shirts sold on Pro Wrestling Tees in a 24-hour period. They beat my record, because we know the Sound Off store, right? We had the #1 record before that, of course. But Sting, he broke our record. He is now the top seller all time. Most popular t-shirt sold in 24 hours. And that was the day after his debut. So already we're seeing the interest is there in buying Sting stuff. That's where you make your money off this guy. On top of that, ratings-wise, at least for a few shows, having Sting could be a real plus for them. I don't think that's going to last. I don't think that's going to hold. I mean, nostalgia will take you only so far. But the whole Winter is Coming promotion for Dynamite was a success. 913,000 total live viewers for Dynamite. That's their highest audience head-to-head with NXT, which fell to 658,000. But their highest head-to-head audience against NXT since their first pandemic show back on March 18th, when we had the debuts of Brody Lee and Matt Hardy. They also did their best key demo numbers since October of last year, the same month that Dynamite came on the air. And, as is usually the case with these things, when you factor in DVR and stuff, they did break 1 million. But yes, they did not hit 1 million live viewers on Wednesday night. That was a bit of a disappointment. Not because anybody knew Sting was going to be there. It has nothing to do with Sting. They were promoting their biggest main event in the history of Dynamite. They were promoting a pay-per-view-esque World Championship main event between Jon Moxley and Kenny Omega, but still a very good number for them. They should be happy and they should hope that number will grow. Sting was a surprise. Nobody knew he would be on this show. Not even a lot of talent in the building. The real ratings test comes this Wednesday. Now that people know he is going to be on the show, they are promoting him for the show. Sting is going to be interviewed by Tony Schiavone. That actually sounds pretty cool. I don't know if this is going to be in the ring. I don't know if this is a sit-down interview, but Tony is going to be interviewing Sting. That's when we're going to find out what is the real drawing power that Sting has. We're going to find out on Wednesday night. Now, overshadowed by the Sting stuff was the fact that we've got a new AEW World Champion. Oh, by the way, and his name is Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega beat Jon Moxley with an assist from Don Callis, his good buddy and one of the head honchos over there at Impact Wrestling. And this was actually very clever the way they did this, because this was not the first time we've seen Don Callis on Dynamite doing commentary. If you remember, I think it was Full Gear, when he had the match with Hangman Page, he did a guest spot on commentary. And that's all anybody thought it was. He said, look, I'm just a friend of Kenny Omega's. And they mentioned Impact Wrestling, but it was pretty much one and done. He did commentary for Kenny's match. He was very respectful. And we never saw him again. And we just sort of assumed, okay, he's back again to do commentary for Kenny's match. It would have been a little more obvious that something was up, I think, if this would have been his first time on commentary, but I think because he was there previously, I don't know that anybody really suspected anything. I certainly didn't. So I thought it was clever that this was clearly in the works for at least a couple of months. But not only did Omega cheat to win and conspire with another promoter to screw Moxley out of the AEW Championship, remember, it was Omega's idea during the contract signing a few weeks ago that there be this gentleman's agreement between them. No more garbage wrestling, John, right? No more weapons, no thumbtacks, no chairs, no barbed wire. Let's just have a wrestling match. Let's just have a one-on-one, fair, straight-up wrestling match. And then Omega goes and he cheats. He hits him in the head with a microphone when the referee is distracted. And he beats him with the one-winged angel. Kenny Omega now is full-blown heel. There can be no doubt. Omega is also the AAA Mega Champion, and he defends his title next Saturday at Triple Mania against Laredo Kid. He's doing all of this with a torn labrum that he's been trying to rehab without surgery, so they better hope that shoulder holds up. So he's a busy guy. He and Don Callis, they hightailed it out of the building. They ran out of the building. Alex Marvez came over to Don Callis before they jumped into the Escalade. He said, "What's going on here?" And Don Callis said, "Tune in to Impact Wrestling on Access TV this Tuesday to find out." And he got in the car and they drove off, and I just thought, you're going to make me watch Impact now, you bastards. You're going to make me watch Impact now. And yes, I realize I don't have to. What they're doing is they're inserting a segment into the show. It's not like they're going to be in the building or they're going to be all over the show. They're going to insert something into the show. It'll be on YouTube 5 minutes later. They'll replay it on Dynamite Wednesday night. But I might check out Impact anyway on Tuesday. I understand that the show is largely considered good, and they obviously have a lot of talented people on that roster. I used to watch Impact many moons ago, and now I just don't. And I don't think that's going to change, but it is a very smart thing, for them to say, hey, let's do something together, because Impact has absolutely, there's nobody talking about Impact the way that they used to talk about Impact. People used to talk about Impact. And people largely do not talk about Impact anymore. It has no buzz whatsoever. I'm not going to say it's a dead product, but they don't have a lot of eyeballs on the product. And that might sting, no pun intended, some of the Impact fans. I'm just stating the facts. I'm just stating truth. Not saying it's a reflection on the quality of the product, but nobody talks about Impact. Nobody rarely even sends me questions about Impact. Nobody asks me to cover Impact, or very few people do. And one of the reasons is there's just the interest level is just not there. I covered Lucha Underground, for example, and I covered NWA Power because I gave it a shot. I liked what I saw. I enjoyed it. And more often than not, it was some of the more, the less reviewed, content that I would put out. There was definitely an audience for it, but I liked it enough that I stuck with it and I watched it, and I was very disappointed, very upset that Lucha Underground just sort of ended without there being any kind of official end. NWA Power was largely a victim of the pandemic and the speaking out scandal. They kind of tag teamed on the NWA. It was a bad situation for them. Now they're starting to try to make some kind of little comeback. But the interest level just isn't there. Impact has absolutely nothing to lose by doing this because it just gets more eyeballs on them. It gets people talking about them. All of a sudden, they're going to have some kind of working arrangement with a promotion on TNT, live on TNT every single week, that is pulling a much, much bigger audience than they do. Even if it's not WWE size, it is a much bigger audience than what Impact is currently getting. And they're on Twitch as well. If you don't have Access TV, I was reminded that you can watch Impact on Twitch. So for those of you who want to check the show out Tuesday night, you can check it out there. It is a win-win situation. There is no negative to this for Impact Wrestling. And I don't think there's much of a negative to it for AEW either. Because it gets the fans excited because of the possibilities that exist for these potential inter-promotional battles. People have favorites of theirs on the Impact roster, and now we can see this person against that person, this team against that team. It's fun for the fans. You know, it's a great situation for the fans. It creates a bit of chaos. You don't know what's going to happen next or who might show up. So again, I don't see this really as being much of a negative for anybody. And if AEW at any point recognizes that this isn't working or it's working against their own best interests, then all they have to do is just end the relationship. It's very easy. But one of the things I like about AEW is the fact that they have been open to this sort of thing. They're open to doing business with the NWA. They're open to doing business with Impact Wrestling. They're open to doing business with New Japan Pro Wrestling. I saw the note in The Observer. Tony Khan has been having regular conversations. He's been engaged in regular dialogue recently with Rocky Romero of New Japan about the possibility of trying to open doors with New Japan now that Harold Mage is gone and out of management. And I guess they looked at him as some sort of obstacle to doing business. Well, he's out of the picture now as of the end of October. They're under new management, kind of. Not ownership, but management. So there is very much the hope and expectation that they can work something out in 2021 between those two companies, provided that travel restrictions are eased soon because of the pandemic, because that makes things a lot harder. All of that, as a fan, I find very exciting. And that's really the partnership I'm looking forward to, even if it's just a working agreement, a talent exchange, whatever it may be. As a fan, I like hearing that, and I find that to be exciting, and I welcome that. And that's something that I appreciate that AEW is open to doing, that WWE is not. I know what Triple H said. Triple H was asked about that on the conference call this week. We're always open for working with other promotions, right? Because they've done work with independent promotions in the UK. I saw some people, they had to go back 30 years to find examples of WWE doing things with promotion in Japan and doing things with the NWA. You're going to have to do better than that. Try to find me a legitimate example in the last, 10 or 15 years, right? Yes, they're open to doing business if it's in their best interest, if it's a promotion that eventually they might buy out. Oh, they're certainly interested in that. But WWE will not do business with you if you are a television competitor. I mean, Triple H can say whatever he wants to. When was the last time WWE did business or had some sort of working arrangement of any kind with an Impact? And I'm not talking about that one time where they sent Christian for an appearance so they could get Ric Flair for the Hall of Fame. That doesn't count. That was a one-time thing. They wanted to get something out of it. They got what they wanted, and that was the end of it. I'm talking whether it's Impact, Ring of Honor, anything like that, because that's what fans are going to think of. You know what the fans mean when they talk about that sort of thing. They want to see these promotions work together in some way. And it's not WWE working with some indie promotion in the UK. That's not what they're interested in. And Triple H is smart enough to know that, so he gives this snarky answer, well, we're always open for, Vince McMahon is, if it's good for business, he'll be open to the idea. When it comes to a competing organization that has television in this country, they're not going to do business with them. It's just their policy. Now, maybe things will be different one day when Vince McMahon isn't in charge anymore, but that just isn't going to happen. Because you can't show me an example of that being the case. And that's fine. If that's their policy, I'm not saying they have to. WWE does not really gain much from working together with Impact or working together with Ring of Honor because they're so damn big. They have so much talent, they don't even know what to do with the people they have under contract. So I'm not sure they even need to be working with another promotion. They don't even know what to do with the people that they have. They need to get their own house in order. But the possibilities here are very intriguing. It is very possible that right now, there is nothing more to this than the Omega Don Callis angle, and Don Callis is potentially just going to end up being Kenny Omega's manager. Don Callis may not even be with Impact that much longer. There was a Wrestling Inc. report this week that suggested that, that might be the case. So we don't know exactly what's going to go on there with Callis. There is no invasion that is needed. I see that word being thrown around. Oh, the invasion. There's going to be... Impact's going to invade Dynamite. Dynamite's going to... You don't need an invasion. We do not need talk of any kind of invasion. We can please leave that language out. Tired of hearing about invasion. Not every working relationship means that one roster has to invade the other. The Young Bucks were talking in an interview they gave to comicbook.com about this whole situation. This is what they had to say in this interview. They said, 2 years ago, this is something that Nick and I actually brought up and we wanted to get this thing going. And for whatever reason, it just did not work out. I don't know if that was more on our side or what, but we just couldn't get everybody to agree on what the creative would be. Even back when we were with Ring of Honor and we got the Hardys to come in when they were a part of Impact, that was also part of our plan. So this is something that we truly wanted to do for a very, very long time, and I guess the timing was right, and we got it done. It is still so early, I don't think that we collectively know what this means. I think we're just dipping our toes right now in and seeing where or what we can get out of it. But there are immediate plans that I cannot exactly just give away right now. But my dream, if I had it my way, I think about the possible dream matches. People are already hitting me up about, oh my God, can you imagine if it was the Young Bucks and the Motor City Machine Guns 10 years later? How can you not jump ahead and fantasize and start to fantasy book? And then he mentioned possible matches with the North and their former Bullet Club partners, the Good Brothers. He says, are we going to do that stuff? I'm not sure yet. We're still in the beginning of this. But there are some big surprises coming, and I'm very excited about it. Would not at all be surprised to see Anderson and Gallows come in to do something. But this is what I'm talking about. Right? It gets people talking. And that's a good thing. And I don't really see where the negative is in that. So we'll see how it plays out, because there's a lot of conflicting messages here about how deep this really is going to go, or is it just going to involve Callis and Omega. But this was a very, very newsworthy episode of Dynamite, and I am more so than this week, I'm very curious what number the show does this week, and just to see what is the overall interest that people have in all of this, between the Sting stuff and this possible, interpromotional tease. How much interest does that generate above and beyond the usual audience that they do? I question, when they're head-to-head with NXT, if there's a ceiling. They have not been able to get to that million point unless they're unopposed. When they're opposed, the key is to try to get to that level. Can they do it? If they can't do it this week, coming up, I don't know that they ever will. When they still have, the one-on-one with NXT, it's going to be very telling, I think, what happens come Thursday when the numbers come in.